I do not recommend that, actually.
Okay.
And I think that's sort of the intuitive thing for applicants to do, is that they're nervous about the MCAT. Well, good evening, Rosy.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm great.
Good. So you are where right now?
So I am planning on applying in May.
Okay.
As long as I get the blessing and everything, we'll see
Okay.
how things go. But I'm currently taking Organic Chemistry 2 lab, microbiology lab, and like a computer requirement class. My last two big prereqs are biochemistry and physics 2, which I'll be taking next semester.
Okay.
And then following like the very end of those courses, I go straight into a Princeton prep course for the MCAT.
Okay.
And then directly after that, I'm planning on, hopefully, if I can get a mid-June date for the MCAT.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of playing everything pretty close. Everything has to kind of go perfectly.
Right. I understand. Well, let's look at, if you've got mapped, let's look at that, and we'll see kind of see how things go. Let's look at the GPA graph there.
Okay.
And let's kind of talk about that for a few seconds. So we see the graph there. We have a cumulative GPA of 3.13, a science GPA of 3.67. And I see that the first couple of semesters back in 06, 07, 08, 09 were a little rocky for you.
A little rough. Yeah. So, and actually it starts in 2005, but unfortunately I'm still waiting on the course catalog for Texas A&M Kingsville. But it's okay because those classes, I was a music education major, so they're not really science related. But it'll kind of help round out the whole picture eventually when all of that gets put up. But yeah, when I first went to college, I was in music education. And I had no idea what I was doing, where I was going. I wasn't very passionate about it. Ended up switching majors a few times, and just through some other life circumstances, I ended up with an academic dismissal. So that's that dip that goes all the way down to the zero in the GPA graph.
Right.
And then I've kind of resuscitated it a little bit there,
yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit about your story of we see a huge difference between really 09 and then coming in again at 13, 14 and then onward. It's a whole different picture. What happened in that what happened right there in those about 4 or 5 year period?
Yeah, so I after my academic dismissal, I still kind of didn't really know what I was doing, and I was just working full time trying to like pay my bills, keep a roof over my head, and I decided to join the Air Force, and I just got really lucky, and the job that I got was cardiopulmonary, which is essentially like a respiratory therapist with some added cardiology, pulmonary clinic, cath lab, sleep lab kind of knowledge. And once I started doing that job, or really when I started going to school for that, it was the first time I ever considered anything medical.
Yeah.
And it was just like kind of the light bulb goes off, and I was like, wow, like this stuff's really cool.
Yeah.
And then when I started doing patient care, then I was really into it because, there's just something about helping someone, especially with breathing, because obviously very essential for living. But when someone's having a hard time breathing and you're the person who comes in and helps them breathe, there's just a certain feeling
Oh, sure.
that's hard to describe. But yeah, so after being in RT for a couple years, hanging around doctors and nurses and PAs and the whole team, that's when I kind of had my light bulb moment, and I went back to school, and that's when you see my GPA resurrection occur there.
Right. That's awesome. And so that's a great story that really illustrates, I think, how in a lot of people's lives, and certainly in your life, that you sort of happened into something that really sparked this interest for you, and that's awesome. That's really
Got
awesome.
lucky.
Yeah, apparently that's great. Now I do see a couple of dips, 16, 17, and then 17, 18, both fall semesters, where you want to discuss those a little bit.
Yeah, so one of those, I was deployed,
Oh
and
no.
it was just kind of hard to be as dedicated because my schedule. So when you're a respiratory therapist in the Air Force, when you deploy, you're either working EMEDs, which is in the little like hospitals, or
Mhm.
you're doing air transport. And I was always air transport. I did CCAT. And so your schedule's very, you can't plan when people get sick. So
Right.
sometimes I would, miss assignments, and the professors worked with me, but it's just, when you can't be 100% dedicated to something, it's just,
Yeah, it's
it
tough.
really showed in my GPA that semester.
Yeah.
And
And that
then,
understandable. Yeah.
yeah, and then the other little dip was when I was PCSing from Germany to Florida. Just because same thing. My stuff was everywhere. My mind was everywhere. It was, it's like you get back to the States, your phone doesn't work. You don't have a
Mhm.
car,
Mhm.
you don't have internet. So, yeah, I mean, same thing. My professors were very nice. They tried to work with me, but
Yeah,
I,
but it
I
did have
wasn't
an
as
impact. Yeah.
dedicated. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. That's totally understandable. Well, I mean, what we see here in terms of your GPA is a great recovery. Is some blips that are completely understandable and explainable, and you have a science GPA that is strong. Three, if we can look back at that again, 3.67 science GPA, and if we calculate it out, your GPA since 13, 14, it'd be radically different than the 3.13 cumulative GPA that we see on that graph. And so,
Right.
so I think you've done the right things in terms of really showing that you're not only that you're committed to this, but also that you're capable academically of doing medicine and doing science in a good way, a strong way. So that's awesome. I'm applaud that for you. That's
Thank
really
you.
great. Yeah, absolutely. And the prereqs, you're finishing up those this semester and next semester, so those will be taken care of. So that's awesome. So
Yes.
let's look at your activities, and we see the graph there, a huge number, 19,892 activity hours, and I suspect that a lot of those are going to be your work in the Air Force and then thereafter. Now, how long
Yes.
have you been out of the Air Force?
I got out May of 2019. So I've been out a
Mm,
little over a year. 2 years?
okay,
No, a little
year
over
and
a
a
year.
half, yeah,
Yeah.
year and a half or so, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. And you're currently working again as a RT, or what are you doing now? Just going to school, or what's going on with you
Yes.
now?
So I'm working here in San Antonio at a level one trauma center, University Hospital.
Hmm.
Just working night shifts, PRN, usually weekends, because I go to school full time
Yeah.
during the week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Well, if you could click on that activities tab over on the left. Good. So I see the military service, the different respiratory therapists, lots of hours. So, the message here that I'm seeing, Rosie, really is that you have lots of experience in healthcare.
Yeah, about 9 years. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, and so that's good. I mean, that really shows, admissions committees that you know what you're getting into. You know what patient care is all about. You know what doctors do. You know what the various team members do. You've broadened that with some volunteer experiences, shadowing some as well. So that's the picture I see here in terms of the activities is really awesome, and so I would really feel really good about that. Now, go back down to the bottom. I'm really interested. So you say one of your hobbies is traveling. So where's the most exciting place you've ever been?
Oh, that's such a hard question to answer. I've been to like 40 countries.
Wow.
I'd say the most exciting was probably Amsterdam.
Oh, wow. That's
Yeah, I
awesome.
almost said Dubai because I also really
Oh,
like Dubai. But I keep going back to Amsterdam, so I think I'm gonna stick
oh,
with that one.
wow. Oh,
It's
good.
just beautiful, the culture, the art, the history, the
Yeah.
canals. We
Yeah.
got like the Anne Frank house and all the different
Yeah.
museums. It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, my oldest daughter's been to Amsterdam, and she loved it too. She thought
Yeah.
it was really amazing. So awesome. Well, now let's talk a little bit about if we'll go back to your dashboard.
Okay.
Um, we talk a little bit about the MCAT. Now, I know you don't have anything in there yet, so my assumption there is that you really haven't done much MCAT wise, even in terms of diagnostic or sample tests or things like that. Is that accurate?
Yeah. That's like the biggest thing on my docket is to do a full length test. I have been really caught up with work on the weekends, but I do have some time off coming up, and I plan on doing a full length test very soon, maybe in like
Okay.
the next week or two.
Okay. Well, I think that would be beneficial. It's going to give you sort of a baseline. And what I would encourage you to do in terms of that first initial exam is don't let it be discouraging to you. Now,
Okay.
hopefully, it's going to be a reasonably good score or whatever, but if it's an awful score, then you have to recognize it is what it is. It's diagnostic. That's what you're looking for. It's to be able to find out where are you on certain topics. You're going to encounter things on the test itself that you're like, I don't have a clue what this is all about. You're going to
Yeah.
encounter other things in terms of questions where you're going to be like, oh yeah, I get this, I know exactly what the answer is. So I think you just need to be, view it for what it is in terms of it's diagnostic. It's a sample test to give you an idea of kind of where you are as a baseline, and you're going to build from that. So that's encouraging. Now, your plan, as you iterated it earlier, is after the coursework next spring, you're going to take a Princeton Review course
Yes.
and prepare, which I think is good because you're going to really be able to, beyond work, you're going to be able to focus completely on that exam
Right.
and completely on your preparation. It's going to become your full-time thing.
Yeah.
And then with anticipation of taking the exam sometime in mid to late June, I think you said.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I think that sounds reasonable. I think, anything that you can do now, one of the things that I would encourage you to do a little bit now is if you have access to any books or online resources for MCAT, is to take the section of those books that is relevant to the courses that you're in right now and the
Okay.
courses that you're going to take in the spring, and just chart along with the coursework that you're taking what the MCAT book says you should be learning in that particular course, or
Okay.
what is relevant to. So you said you're in O-Chem 2 right now, so review when you get a chance the O-Chem section of one or more of those books, and just get a sense of, okay, do I know what's going on here? Am I tracking this? Do I have some clue what the MCAT book is talking about when it talks about certain things relative to O-Chem 2? And so what that does is it helps you kind of know, okay, I'm getting it. I'm getting the right stuff in the courses that's going to help me study for the MCAT itself. And then you can do that again in the spring with biochem and with physics. The same thing. And you can, in the spring in particular, you can start off with biochem from the very beginning and just track right closely along with your coursework, the book on the MCAT. Am I getting, what I need to be getting out of this? So that can be, I think, sometimes helpful.
Okay. Yeah. My, the Princeton course that I got came with a big old box of books.
Yeah.
So I definitely have that to go along with.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah. That'd be great. Good. Well, going back to, sort of the issue at hand, and what I would say, Rosy, is that you're very close to a green light in terms of moving forward in the application process in terms of are you ready? And you'll understand when I say that by saying that I think the yellowish part of the light is just that there's pieces that we don't know yet.
Yeah.
Most notably the MCAT. But I think, the good news is your GPA, you're doing really well in the coursework. You're really rocking and rolling in terms of your process. You've got tons of experience in health-related stuff in terms of volunteering and work and all that. So you clearly know what's going on and what you're getting into. You're tracking along perfectly with, completing your prereq. So really the only question mark here is the MCAT score. And so what I would recommend that you do is just make an assumption that things are going to work out perfectly. As you said earlier, when we were talking at the very beginning, you said that the timeline, and I will acknowledge that your timeline is a tight one. Yeah. And if anything happens in your life, life sometimes has a way of interrupting things, and we're gonna keep our fingers crossed that nothing goes on that's going to interrupt your process or the timeline that you've established. But I want you to keep in the back of your mind that even if something does interrupt your timeline, that's not the end of the story. That the end of that the story goes on, and that let's say MCAT doesn't go well for you, or let's say something happens that interrupts the spring semester where you're not able to do it, or something happens, whatever. Just keep in mind that you've got another go round to come, and so let's hope that doesn't happen. But I just want you to keep that kind of in the back of your mind, that even if something does happen, it doesn't mean the end of the story for you.
Right.
So and that's important, especially for post-bac students, non-traditional students like yourself, who really, you've been on this trajectory for several, a year or more now, 2 years, kind of thinking this is the direction my life's going to take, and this is what I want to do. And the idea of something interrupting that can be really just, kind of earth-shattering. And I don't want it to be that. And I really want to say to the listeners and the viewers of this video or the podcast that, even when life interrupts our plans, it doesn't mean the end of the plan. It means you extend the plan, or it changes a little bit or whatever. But I want you to know that my feeling, barring any weird things that happen, I think you're on a good track. Things are going well for you. You're doing the right stuff. You've got all your plans in place, and I'm fully supportive of everything that you've talked about, and I think you'll be ready by next May, June, July, when you get that MCAT score back. And what I would encourage you to do is, when you're in the Princeton Review course next late spring, early summer, go ahead and start the application. The TMD SAS one opens May 1. AMCAS and ACOMAS, depending on where you're going to be applying, open not long after that. And you're going to be able to go ahead and start the application, and you're going to be used to a lot of the information and stuff that's going to be required of you because of MAPT, and because MAPT has really kind of charted out that for you. And so I would say use that as a bit of a break time from studying for the MCAT. Take a hour or two and put stuff into the application, and just use that as sort of downtime, especially when you're putting in your coursework and all that. It's a little mundane and everything, but it's a little bit of a, after you're cognitively overloaded with MCAT studies, sometimes you need that mundane, just like, typing stuff in and stuff. So use that as some break times. And then you can, by the time you get that done, you can go ahead and submit your application, and then all they're doing is waiting for the MCAT, and you'll go forward. So
would you recommend for the TMDSAS application, or I guess for any of them, to wait until I get my score back to hit like submit?
I do not recommend that, actually.
Okay.
And I think that's sort of the intuitive thing for applicants to do, is that they're nervous about the MCAT.
Yeah.
And so they want to know that their MCAT scores is in the neighborhood of where they wanted it to be before they hit that submit button. The problem with that is that if you wait, then that's going to propel you into July. Depending on when you take the MCAT, it may propel you into mid to late July. Yeah. And so before the medical schools even have a completed application for you. And so what I would recommend is go ahead and hit submit, so that everything, the medical schools are going to have everything. All they're going to be waiting for is that MCAT score. And literally when TMDSAS gets that MCAT score, the next day the medical schools have it. And so it's very fast process. Yeah. And so that really will, I think, make a difference. So my recommendation would be go ahead and hit the submit button, get everything done, so that that is off your plate. You don't have to worry about it anymore. And then all they're waiting for. And it's also a bit of a positive thinking kind of exercise.
Yeah.
Because, when you're waiting for that MCAT score before you hit submit, then you're kind of doing it in assumption that you're nervous about that it's not going to be good enough.
Yeah.
And so what I want you to do is think positively and affirm the process by saying, I'm going to push this submit button. And what that's going to say to the universe is, I can do this. I am being positive about my aspirations to go into medicine, about my ability to perform well on the MCAT, and I'm going to do this. And so, it's little things like that I think that really can, invigorate your life and your approach to the whole process. But also it says, however you want to say it, it says to the universe, or the universe at large, or whatever you want, however you want to define it, it says it puts an affirmation out there, and it says, this is what I want. This is my plan. This is what I want. And this is what it is I want to happen. So, yeah. So I definitely think that you have I would say a green light with a caveat. The caveat being that nothing interrupts the process and stuff. And, even if it does, then there's still hope, and there's still, you don't have to feel like that's the end of the journey. But I feel good about where things are for you, Rosy.